The next step in creating your community emergency plan is to create specific action plans for the hazards identified in the HIRA process. You should begin by developing specific plans for the highest ranking hazards and work your way down to the lower ranking hazards.
Now, you need to develop specific action plans to deal with each threat. An action plan is a series of steps for responding to a particular hazard. An action plan includes a list of general actions to be taken, the rationale, which is the summary of the specific steps, and also includes who is responsible for carrying out the action plan. When an action plan is created, the actions or tasks are associated with specific agencies, groups, or individuals. For instance, if the threat is a forest fire, then the actions will be assigned to the forest firefighters. If the problem is physical injury, then it is assigned to the local health nurse. If the EOC needs to be activated, then the CERC will take action. All action plans need to be reviewed, finalized, and approved. Then they will be an important part of your community emergency plan.
The next step in developing your community emergency plan is to create a list of resources available within your community.
Resources include many different things, such as people or knowledge, places or facilities, and things or equipment. Resources could be people with specific skills or knowledge, such as volunteer firefighters, nurses, radio operators, counselors, or elders able to take care of children or provide comfort to others. Resources can be any local person who has skills that would be valuable in dealing with an emergency.
Another very important thing is local knowledge and traditional knowledge. I was out fighting a fire in Watee, and I seen this old timer sitting there on the dock, and I said, "What's happening?" He said, "I'm waiting till about 3:30. I said, "Why are you waiting till 3:30? He said, "Because 3:30 the wind's going to switch around, and I'm going to go check my nets." So he knew every day at a certain time the winds are going to switch, and then it'll be calm for him to get past the bay and get around the point. You know, stuff like that that you ask the people and involve the people in the community, you know.
Resources also include equipment such as VHF or HF radios, satellite phones, GPS, portable generators, portable pumps, dump trucks, fire trucks, or first aid kits. Facilities are another resource and include buildings designated for a specific function during an emergency, such as a hamlet or band office being used as an emergency operations center, or a rec center serving as an evacuation center. Now that you have a list of available resources, the next step is to consider if the resources you have are enough to complete the tasks and actions. To evaluate your resources in relation to tasks, you need to ask some important questions, like, is this enough to complete this action plan? Is this enough to deal with a disaster? Can our community respond to more than just one incident at a time? If not, then you need to ask if there are possibilities for mutual aid arrangements, or if there are other organizations that would agree to be a part of your emergency plan. For example, if a nearby community or major industry has equipment or personnel which you need for a particular emergency, they might be willing to offer assistance. These are called mutual aid agreements. These should be written up and included in your community emergency plan. These agreements allow you to use other resources, personnel, and equipment that are available from other sources. You may also want to look at whether there are important resources that your community may simply need to buy. You should also include emergency plans and resources of any member agencies. Each member or partner agency is responsible for developing their individual part of the plan or sharing their agency's emergency plan. They must also include a list of their available resources. It is the Emergency Management Coordinator who guides the work of each agency in preparing its own detailed plan to fulfill its specific emergency responsibilities. When you're finished, the Community Emergency Plan will be a compilation of the information your community would need in the event of any emergency. The more complete this package is before an emergency occurs, the easier it will be for your community to use it to effectively guide local responders and supporting agencies and individuals in dealing with the impacts of an emergency. Now that all the necessary information has been put together and organized, the draft plan requires final review, first by the CERC and then by the MACA superintendent. Then any required changes are made to the draft by the Emergency Management Coordinator. After final comments have been considered or included in the plan by the Emergency Management Coordinator, it is presented to the Community Council for formal adoption. Unless further changes are required, Council adopts a bylaw which approves the Community Emergency Plan. The process of developing an emergency plan is never over. The final step of validation is ongoing. Regular review, evaluation, updating, training, and practice helps to ensure that everyone knows what they are doing and are trained and able to do it.
Emergency preparedness plan takes a while, and it's never perfect. It's an ongoing living document. If something goes wrong, you find out what you missed, you put it back into your plan, you talk to everybody. And then you find out the first emergency, you didn't have it all in there, you got to put some more stuff in.
Validation means making sure that something works well or is useful or effective. For your emergency plan, that means staying aware of what's in the plan and whether anything needs to be changed. When things change in your community, this may mean that you need to make changes to your community emergency plan. For example, if weather patterns alter, your resources or infrastructure have changed, or there are new regulations and standards. Validation is the ongoing process of evaluating, reviewing, updating, training, and practicing all or various parts of your community emergency plan to make sure it really will be useful in an emergency. External feedback or comments from people outside of the CERC can be helpful by providing a fresh outlook, identifying things the committee may have overlooked, and recognizing assumptions that may need to be reconsidered. In the event of an actual emergency, the community reviews its response to the event and how well the emergency plan worked. This is called an operational debriefing. Every Community Emergency Response Committee should conduct a debriefing after an emergency in which they've needed to use their emergency plan. This is very important as it can help to improve the plan. Documentation must be kept current and shared with the necessary agencies and individuals. Policies, procedures, contact information, and plans must be maintained and reviewed from time to time to assure accuracy and relevance to community preparedness and response. If there haven't been any actual emergencies, then the community can gain this same sort of information or experience from training and exercises. Conducting exercises will help validate your emergency plan. Exercises are basically ways to practice by pretending that an emergency is actually happening. This is a chance to figure things out when there are no real problems and no stress of an actual disaster. Members should practice and troubleshoot their roles so that when faced with an emergency, they know what the problems, resources, and limitations are. It helps the community to clarify roles and responsibilities, to practice as a team, and to revise the emergency plan. While there are different kinds of exercises to use, your community will most likely use a tabletop exercise to test the plan. A tabletop exercise is a discussion among the members of the Community Emergency Response Committee that takes place with the help of a facilitator. Key personnel are given a particular emergency situation, and they decide on what they need to do in order to deal with it effectively. Even though validation is the final step of your community emergency plan, it is really an ongoing exercise to continually review existing arrangements in the plan and to consider necessary resources, agency roles and responsibilities, and staff training requirements. Through regular exercises of the emergency plan, your community can ensure that all members of the CERC have the necessary training and skills to be able to fulfill their responsibilities during an emergency. While it's great to have your community emergency plan down on paper, Making sure that your plan is really going to work for you right now is what's really important, because chances are one day you're going to depend on it.